All right, folks, I know in my last video I said that the MAID program was Canada's deepest and darkest secret, but I think the temporary foreign worker program is right there with it because when we get into the stats, it'll amaze you to see what exactly is happening in Canada and the level of exploitation that many Canadians just may not be aware of. But before I do, folks, if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe. My name is Christopher. I host the Open Minds podcast where I explore the biggest topics with genuine curiosity. Between 2015 to 2023, temporary foreign workers grew by about 250,000 to over 900,000. And the original purpose of the program was to fill labor shortages in key industries across this country, specifically in agriculture. But over the years, the temporary foreign worker program has expanded to other sectors like retail, childcare, healthcare, and the fast food industry, and it's not nearly as temporary as you might think. Before, workers would come, they'd work for a few years, and then they'd go back to their home country with more money in their pockets and perhaps an opportunity to move their families as a result. But now with the temporary foreign worker program, there's no temporary anymore. Workers are staying many, many years, and the government is benefiting from this cheap, exploitative form of labor. These workers have no mobility rights, they're tied to one worker, and if they complain, they're deported. I remember a situation back in a few years ago where Jamaican migrant workers complained about the conditions in Niagara Falls, Niagara region, working on some of the farmland out there. And that was quite interesting. That it's one of the first times I've heard about migrant workers complaining about worker condition right here in Canada. But here's where it gets interesting. You know, there are many Indigenous communities, many young Canadians who are looking for jobs. And the allure of temporary foreign workers outweighs the reality of trying to hire more domestic workers as well. In construction alone, Indigenous workers and young Canadians said that they saw their opportunities shrink in that sector. And if you're an industry leader and you want more and more labor, temporary foreign workers provide you cheap and expensive labor, no mobility rights. They're not allowed to talk back without deportation. They're eliminating a lot of the labor protections that Canadians have. Why would you want to hire a Canadian? And what's really interesting is that over the years, politicians have tightened the temporary foreign worker program and then loosened it because of larger industries pressuring the government and then tightening again, very yo-yoing effect. Jason Foster, the professor who I interviewed, speaks more about this. But ultimately, what we've seen is an explosion of temporary foreign workers across Canada, meaning an over-reliance than ever before on cheap, inexpensive labor. Some have even characterized it as modern-day indentured labor. But here's the bigger problem, and something that I've noticed here in Canada. This can cause major social unrest. In fact, Germany experienced exactly this when it expanded its temporary foreign worker program and created this permanent underclass of workers not from Germany who then experienced all types of discrimination and a completely divided workforce in Germany as a result. And if you think about it, this actually may lead to a completely divided workforce here in Canada. You may have laborers with full rights in Canada, Canadian citizens, and then you'll have workers without full rights that are contributing to our economy and propping our economy up. And you might think I might be overstating this. In 2011, there were 356,000 temporary foreign workers. There's 1.3 million temporary foreign workers today that we know of. That number could be highly understated. So if in fact we're going down the path of this divided workforce, more dependent on cheaper, inexpensive labor, what does that say about Canada and our country and our values as well? Also, what do we do as Canadians to clean up this mess? Now, here's the question. Is it a mess? That's the question. Many people might say, you might characterize it as a mess, but the reality is that this is cheap and expensive labor. People are willing to come to Canada, and they're willing to engage in this type of labor. What's the problem? The problem, as I mentioned, is that not only are there lacking rights, it's creating a divided workforce, and it can lead to social unrest as more and more temporary foreign workers are brought in to more and more industries, further displacing Canadians. I swear I remember reading somewhere that temporary foreign workers were brought in to a major, I think it was a bank or something, and the bank let go of the Canadian workers, and the Canadian workers were supposed to train up the TFWs coming in. Now, again, none of this is meant to be, xenophobic, racist, etc., towards temporary foreign workers. To me, it's about the system that we've created as a country. And I wonder, where do we go from here now that the cat's out the bag? I mean, what employer is going to be like, you know what I need? I need to pay more for labor costs. Is this a strategy, do you think, by Canada to remain competitive as a G7 nation? And if so, do you think this is ultimately shooting us in the foot? Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and let me know what you think what Canada needs to do moving forward.